As with any other Tech Tuesday, if you have questions, feel free to jump in and ask your questions. That's what we're here for, really, to help you with any tech questions. But we're going to talk mostly about the FTC Safeguard Rules for today. I think it's important. The updated Safeguard Rules went into effect on June 9th, I believe, June 9th or July 9th. I think it was June 9th of this year. And it impacts quite a few businesses. It's financial in focus, but also the number of businesses that fall under the FTC's definition of financial might be a little surprising to some. So let's get going on this. So the FTC Safeguard Rules refers to regulation enacted by the FTC in the United States that mandates that financial institutions create, implement, and maintain a comprehensive information security program to protect the security, confidentiality, integrity of customer information. These rules are part of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, the GLBA, enacted to ensure the secure handling of sensitive customer information. And again, the target audience here is financial businesses, but again, that definition is a little loose, as you're going to see, and there's probably there's room for gray area for sure with this definition of financial firms, financial institutions. So you're probably thinking banks and financial advisors, but it's a lot bigger than that. So who does it apply to? So it applies to financial institutions that are under the jurisdiction of the FTC. According to the GLBA, a financial institution is any business that directly or indirectly engages in financial activities. This broad definition includes, but is not limited to, banks and credit unions. So that one's pretty obvious. Traditional financial institutions such as banks, credit unions, and savings and loans institutions are covered under this rule. This one's a little less obvious, and I get some pushback from these businesses sometimes, and that's insurance companies. These are firms offering insurance products, including insurance underwriters and agents. So I'm friendly with a few insurance agents in the area, and they sometimes don't believe, not my friends specifically, but some of these insurance agents don't believe that they fall under the definition of a financial institution as given by the FTC. Security firms, this includes brokers, dealers, and investment advisors. Lenders, again, that makes sense. Lenders, institutions involved in lending activities such as mortgage brokers. This is another group that sometimes they don't believe they are considered a financial institution, but they are. Mortgage brokers, finance companies, and entities offering payday loans. We don't work with payday loans. I'm not a fan of payday loan companies, so we do not work with those. But non-bank financial institutions, this can encompass a wide range of businesses, including but not limited to check cashing services, payday lenders, mortgage brokers, non-bank lenders, real estate appraisers, and tax preparers. So again, some gray area there, because tax preparers, we hadn't heard that one before. Non-bank lenders, we hadn't heard that one before. Real estate appraisers, anybody in real estate could probably fall under the definition of financial institution by the FTC. So something else to think about. I have just recently, I've seen a commercial property, commercial rental business. They rent out commercial properties, and they were asking for Social Security numbers, EIN numbers, and so forth in a Word document via email. And I had to point out that this is not safe, secure by any stretch, and that they need to improve their processes, because this would be considered a violation of the FTC rule. Automobile dealers. This one shook the automobile industry, and I could tell you firsthand that it definitely woke up some automobile dealers. But automobile dealers fall under this FTC Safeguard Rules. And that is because they collect financial information from purchasers. So they would have reason to have Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, and things like that. Retailers that issue their own credit cards to consumers are also covered under this rule. So the Walmarts, the Boscovs, those companies that issue credit cards, Target, they fall under this rule. Service provider companies that receive personal financial information from financial institutions to process or store data on their behalf might also be subject to certain provisions under the safeguard rule. So you already have to worry about PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry. So if you accept credit cards, then you have to make sure you're compliant with the PCI DSS rules. The rules are pretty similar for most compliance requirements, but now you have to worry about this as well if you accept credit cards and store that information. Professional firms, certain professional firms such as accountants and lawyers who provide financial advice or services to individuals. So a bankruptcy attorney might fall under this. And that's somewhat where the gray area comes in. It's not clear if a bankruptcy attorney would fall under this FTC safeguard rules. However, based on this definition, I would say that they do. So what's at stake? So I'm going to use really a specific example of dealerships because I do think this sent a ripple through the dealership world where some dealerships, auto dealerships, are found themselves scrambling to get in line with the FTC safeguard rules. And initially, the rules were supposed to go into effect December of last year. They pushed it back 6 months to June of this year, but they are in effect now. And the reason is, and I'm not saying this is all dealerships, but some dealerships, I would say more the majority of dealerships were kind of lax on their security, cybersecurity, and even their physical security protocols within their business. And this has created a problem for them because now they have to be compliant. And the FTC is a little bit different. They don't wait for a data breach or a violation of the rules to investigate. They can investigate without reason. They could just go in and say, let's look at your records and make sure that you have the things. We're going to review all the things that are required, not all, but a lot of the things that are required for the FTC safeguard rules for your business to meet the rules. And automobile dealerships, for some reason, some of them decided, okay, we need to get it together and get on the right page with the cybersecurity and physical security and all of that. So what's at stake? So dealerships experienced an average of 16 days of downtime after a ransomware attack with an average payout of $228,125. That was in 2020, I believe. 36% of data breaches at dealerships are related to phishing. That's actually low compared to some of the other industries, but it's still a problem. And I would also venture to guess that they're not all being reported. I can promise you, if you have an email address, you are getting phishing emails. There is nothing you could do to stop phishing emails other than educate yourself. And there are some layers of security that will help prevent some of those phishing emails from coming in, but you cannot 100% protect yourself from them unless you know what you're looking for. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But that illustrates the importance of the education piece. And it also illustrates that a lot of the time breaches are caused by us, by humans. Yes, a phishing email isn't sent by, somebody within the business, hopefully, but they're still getting phishing emails. And if they're not aware of what to look for, then they're at risk of falling for the phishing email. And I just shared a video yesterday of a newer type of email that's going out. It claims to be from Microsoft, and it says that your multi-factor authentication, your two-factor authentication session is going to expire, and to scan the QR code to re-enable your two-factor authentication method. It's a scam. It takes you to a fake website. I tested the QR code. It is fake. So that video is on our YouTube page, and that's at Nawaj Tech, but that's I'll share that link with you later. That is an example of a phishing email that somebody's probably going to fall for. I can almost guarantee you somebody's going to fall for it. I've had it sent to me now by 2 different clients to really just to share with me so that I can make other people aware, but it is a problem. Overall, financial services, this is as of this year, financial services organizations have 449,855 exposed sensitive files and 36,004 open to everyone in the organization. This is the highest when comparing industries. So of all the industries out there, financial services leaves the most sensitive information open to everyone in the organization compared to every other industry out there. Now, again, the accountants and the financial advisors are probably doing a better job of protecting these things. So we're probably looking at the auto dealerships, the maybe the tax preparers, the mortgage lenders, those types of businesses that are maybe they were not aware that they fell into these rules. Maybe they just didn't care. It's hard to say. The bankruptcy attorneys might be another good example. So they're leaving these things exposed to everyone in the organization, which then puts you at risk, because if you are one of those 36% or higher, when it's some of the other financial services businesses that fall for phishing attacks, then you're exposing all of that data. There was it's down here, so I'll get to that in a second. Financial firms report 703 cyber attempts per week. So each firm is experiencing 703 cyber attack attempts per week. On average, financial service businesses take an average of 233 days to detect and contain a data breach. So about 2/3 of a year, maybe a little more. My math is mathing. It takes them to discover that they've been breached. So that means that you have attackers on your network for 233 days doing whatever they want, looking for data that they could steal, and they will steal. They're looking for what else they can get a hold of, what else can they connect to, what other damage can they do before they launch a ransomware attack, is usually how it works. So that's a long time for someone to just be snooping through your computers, looking for ways to hurt your business, looking for information to steal sensitive data, which again will include social security numbers, EIN numbers, home addresses, email addresses, first and last names, probably tax information, a lot of things that driver's license numbers, a lot of things that could do a lot of damage to your personal identity, and then your business as well. 63% of financial institutions experience an increase in destructive attacks, which is a 17% increase from the previous year. 71% of financial institutions noted an increase in wire transfer fraud. This is a big issue in real estate and some other of the financial industries. That usually involves a business email compromise, which means that somebody inserted themselves into an email conversation and pretended to be one of the parties, and then ended up having a financial wire rerouted to a different location. This also seems to happen a lot with municipalities. 63% of financial services businesses experience an increase in brokerage account takeover, up from 41% the previous year. So that is a big jump. And again, these are as of this year, 2023. 74% of financial sector security leaders experience one or more ransomware attacks. 63% of those victims paid the ransom. So what does that mean? That means 3/4 of financial sector security leaders have had some experience with ransomware attacks. So a ransomware attack, if you don't know, what that means is they get in. Most ransomware attacks today will steal whatever data they can find, because they're also going to try to extort money from you, because they're going to say, we have your client's financial information, or we have your client's personal information, and we're going to tell them about it. We're going to sell it on the dark web. We're going to share with the world that we have this information. And after they've stolen all the data they think they can get a hold of, they then encrypt everything that they can encrypt, meaning you no longer have access to it. It's encrypted. And the only way to decrypt it is with a decryption key. And most often you cannot get a decryption key without paying a ransom. Or if you have a backup of all the data, then you restore it. So that's for another day. You should have a backup of all your data. 63% of those victims paid the ransom. So of the 75%, 6 out of 10 paid the ransom, meaning they probably didn't have a backup, or they didn't want to create a bigger problem by not paying the ransom. It's not recommended to pay the ransom. You should never pay the ransom, but these organizations are paying the ransom for whatever reason, either to recover quicker, or because they can't recover without it, or because they don't want to have their clients' information exposed on the dark web. Whatever the reason is, they're paying the ransom. Sorry. All right, moving to the next slide. Are there any questions so far? All right. So what are the requirements for the FTC Safeguard Rules? So this is kind of the umbrella look, the broad overview look of what the requirements are for the FTC Safeguard Rules. If you're familiar with any of the compliance programs, I should say, then these are going to look somewhat familiar to the others. They're not all that different, except for the audience. The audience is the financial world. The first one is you should have an information security program. Financial institutions must develop a comprehensive security program tailored to the size and complexity of their operations. Now, the size, you might think, all right, so if I'm a one-person tax preparer, then I don't care. Who cares? Well, that's not true. First of all, the IRS has already told you what you need to have in place. Very similar to what the FTC safeguard rules are, but things like two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication need to be in place. Encryption on all your devices needs to be there. Encryption in transit needs to be there. All of these things have to be in place to protect your clients' information. And I know single person, one person tax preparer businesses, and they have thousands of clients' information. If they're not taking care of it, it's not encrypted, and they're not doing their best to secure it, then they are just as at risk as a larger financial firm. Now, there are probably more complexities with a larger firm, maybe multiple locations, and then you have to talk about VPNs and things like that. But an information security program needs to be in place no matter the size of the business, but that program can be tailored to the size of the business or the complexity of the business. And by the way, most of that plan should be written. Risk assessments, you should at minimal perform an annual risk assessment. Organizations are required to identify and assess risks to customer information in all areas of their operation and develop safeguards to control these risks. So why do I say at minimum annually? Because once you do a risk assessment, you're going to identify areas that need to be corrected urgently, and probably more critical, things that are more critical. Let's say, for example, you have Server 2012, Windows 2012 in your environment, which I believe the end of life is coming up maybe next month, meaning Microsoft will no longer support it. They will no longer issue security updates for it, which makes you vulnerable. That's critical. That needs to get addressed now. And so when you address it, that changes your assessment, and you need to update the assessment. And so that's why at minimal once a year, but also you have to update it as you address the items on the list. So you don't just run the risk assessment and say, okay, well, I've got X, Y, and Z as risks. We'll do this again next year and see if they're corrected. That's not really how it works. You have to continually update the risk assessment, make sure that things that you've identified as risks are being taken care of as quickly as possible. Now, I'm coming from the technical perspective, but the risk assessments also need to address physical concerns. So if your office is on the first floor of a building and you have all windows around your building, and you have sensitive information all the time on these computers, screens exposed to the outside world, then you need to address that, whether it's privacy screens, whether it's encryption on the computers in case somebody breaks in. Those things need to be addressed as well. So those are called, some of that is physical. The privacy screen on your computer is a physical form of risk. Maybe putting up windows that are maybe plexiglass or something like that, or having RFID scanners instead of key and lock, so the doors can't be pried open as easily. Having security cameras put up. All these are physical in nature. Also, risk assessments will ask you to identify the risks involved with natural disasters. So in our area of the world, hurricanes, blizzards, things like that. In other areas, you might have to worry about earthquakes or tornadoes or for wildfires. So all of those things need to be considered as part of the risk assessment. So it's not just technical. A good chunk of it is technical, but some of it is physical in nature. Now you have the implementation of safeguards. Once risks have been identified, financial institutions need to design and implement a safeguard program and regularly monitor and test it to ensure its effectiveness. So you've identified the risks, you put in, you've corrected some of those risks, but that also means you put in some safeguards. So what does that mean? Maybe you implement zero trust. So we at Noash Tech, we implement zero trust with all of our clients. Every last client has zero trust on all of their devices within the business. And what that means is they cannot install or run scripts or do or have admin privileges without requesting access to it. And that access comes to us. We take a look at what it is, and then we approve or deny based on our findings. That's zero trust, meaning we don't trust anything. We're not going to allow anything that's not already been approved. It feels uncomfortable to some, but it's better than the alternatives. There are other things. There are advanced, I'll call it advanced malware protection. It's not the technical term isn't that, but that's what it is. It's looking for anomalies on your systems. It's looking for signature files. It's looking for weird activities that might indicate you have a problem on your network. But we'll also look at, your Google Workspace account or your Microsoft 365 account and see if there's areas there that might have issues. And that requires some safeguards that we put in place. Eliminating admin privileges for anybody who doesn't need it, which is usually almost everybody in the business. What was the other? It was something else that came to mind. There's DNS protection. So we remove access to certain types of content on the internet. So, gambling sites or brand new phishing sites or things like that. Service providers. So this is a challenge. It can be a challenge. And I'll just use an example. So financial institutions must take steps to select and retain service providers that can maintain appropriate safeguards for customer information and require those service providers to, by contract, to implement and maintain such safeguards. So we now are in a world where you have, we call it IoT, Internet of Things. And what does that mean? It means you have environmental controls that are connected to the internet. You have access controls that are protected, that are connected to the internet. You have all these different controls within a business that require internet access. So how do you protect your business when the guy that set up your environmental controls, your HVAC, has access to the business? Well, we've run into this, and so we created a separate network for the environmental controls. When the HVAC company needed access to those controls, we set up a separate computer that didn't have connection to anything else and didn't have anything on it but the ability to connect to the HVAC controls. And this is how you protect from the service providers, but also the service providers should be made aware that they also have requirements when they're within your business. So they should be doing their best to make sure that they are adhering to the same rules that you're adhering to. So if they are putting in new switches and new cameras, those switches and cameras need to follow the protocol that the rest of the business is using. They should be segregated from the rest of your network. They should not access anything they shouldn't access. They should have all of the same safeguards put onto them. So the same, strong credentials two-factor authentication if applicable, strong passwords, things like that. Removing default passwords is also huge. I just ran into this. I don't remember where it was now, but it was a printer in a law firm, and they were having issues with the printer. The printer company, so it was a managed printer, so the printer was being leased. The printer company was not being efficient in trying to get it fixed. And so they asked if I could help. And I logged into one of their computers and connected to the printer, and the printer still had the default username and password on it. So I Google the default username and password for that printer model, and it worked, which is bad because this is a law firm that potentially could be scanning or printing sensitive information. So anybody could get in and then potentially steal that information. That's a service provider. Evaluation and adjustment. The information security program should be continuously monitored. It goes back to doing our risk assessment continuously, not just once a year, and adjusted based on testing results or changes in operations or technology. So again, you do the risk assessment. The first one is going to be tough. You're going to uncover things that make you uncomfortable, you didn't really think about before. You address them, then it gets a little easier. But you got to continuously do this. So as an example, in roughly 2 years, Windows 10 will no longer be supported. I think it's 2 years from October. It will no longer be supported, and you'll have to upgrade to Windows 11. And for some of us, that's easy. You have a computer that's already asked you multiple times to upgrade to Windows 11. You did or you didn't do it based on your level of comfort with switching to a new operating system. It's Windows 11 is okay. It's not too big of a stretch if you're still on the fence. But there's a lot of computers out there that are not capable of upgrading to Windows 11 because there's a specific hardware requirement. So as an example, the desktop I'm currently using cannot be upgraded to Windows 11. So I would need to upgrade to Windows 11 in 2 years. Well, when you upgrade to Windows 11, that means you're going to have new devices in your environment, and you're going to need to adjust that assessment. Are those computers secure? Did we do everything we need to? Did you turn on BitLocker? Did we install the latest and greatest security? Did we install Zero Trust if you're using Zero Trust? And I would highly recommend you do. Are all of those things taken care of? The FTC Safeguard Rule does say you should have two-factor authentication even on your computer login. So my desktop has two-factor authentication. This is a very hard conversation to have with a lot of businesses because now you have to send a notification or a PIN or something to somebody's smartphone. So how does that work? When you have 100 employees, it's not that easy to set up. But that is a recommendation by the FTC. So there are other ways to manage this, and making sure you have complex passwords. So now you have to set up the computers to make sure that, the complex password is in place and that it can't be changed to something simple. You have to reevaluate. And in case of a breach, financial institutions are usually required to notify customers and law enforcement to help protect customers from the harms that might result from unauthorized access to their information. Now, in Connecticut, if you are in Connecticut, we have some of the strictest data breach laws in the country, and you will have to report to the Attorney General as well. But if you have a breach and you're a financial institution, then you do have to report it to FTC. I think the number is 5,000 records. I'd have to double check that, but it's as long as you have a certain number of records, then you have to report it to the FTC. And now it's a data breach. So what happens with a data breach? You're going to have legal fees. You're going to have mitigation. You're going to have remediation. You're going to have brand identity hit. You're going to have potentially lawsuits. The FTC is most definitely going to fine you. They don't do so. We also do a lot with HIPAA. OCR will come in and warn you first and say, get this fixed or else, and then you'll fix it. And if you fix it, then fine, they leave you alone. But if you don't fix it, then you're going to get penalized financially. The FTC doesn't do this. They will financially penalize you no matter what. If you are not adhering to their rules, then you're going to have a penalty levied against you. But it is reportable. You have to report it. You can't cover it up. It almost always comes to light. It may not be, if I get breached today and people aren't going to know tomorrow, but eventually it gets out. Eventually people are like, something's not right. My information got leaked. And they could usually trace it back to where it was. So you have to report it. Not reporting it is going to make you look even worse. You should also have a board of directors. Again, if you're a one-person tax preparer, you probably don't have a board of directors. But if you're a medium-sized business, small to medium, a few hundred employees or bigger, the rule mandates the involvement of board of directors or an appropriate committee of the board in the oversight and implementation of the security program. So I've had businesses that are smaller in nature, and it's just the, a manager or the owner of the business that oversees it. And then there are businesses that have an entire board of directors that say, we got to make sure this gets done. So it really depends on the size of the business. But it doesn't matter the size of the business. The only determination on whether or not the business falls under the FTC Safeguard Rules is it a financial firm? And if it is, how many records do they have? And you will find it's really easy to reach the minimum number of records to fall under the FTC Safeguard Rules. It's not hard. And I would imagine at some point that number will probably get lower. So I'm not sure if it's 5,000. It might be bigger than that. I can probably look it up. But if it's, let's say it's 50,000, at some point they might say, well, okay, now it's 10,000. And the idea is to protect client information, our information. So if I go and have my taxes done by someone, it's not right that my tax information is now exposed to the whole world because the tax preparer didn't take the necessary precautions to protect it. And unfortunately, where this should have been done all along, because it's the right thing to do, it's called customer service. A lot of businesses, no matter what they were, there's a bad apple everywhere. So somebody wasn't doing it right. And so I'll tell you some of the things I've seen. Well, let's do this last one. Documentation and records. Financial institutions must maintain appropriate records of the steps taken to safeguard customer information. Again, it goes back to having your information security plan and then updating it as you go. For clients, if you have a managed service provider, and again, a lot of businesses think you can't have an IT provider until you're a certain size. That's not true. I have clients as small as 1, and I have clients as big as 120. So you can have an IT provider no matter the size of your business. You just have to find the right one. And so we have documentation. Anytime something is changed, we document it. Anytime something is fixed, we document it. It's all documented within our systems. But if that's not happening, then you got to make sure it's being documented somewhere as well. Now, some of the things I've seen, I have seen driver's license scans on iPads on a showroom. So you log into the iPad, you look at the images, and there's a driver's license, somebody's driver's license there. I have seen years and years and years worth of financial information stored on a local computer of one employee with no backups. Extremely risky, because if that computer fails, then all that stuff is gone. But also, what if somebody gets a hold of that? What if another employee gets on that computer and just decides, I'm going to steal this information and see if I can sell it? Or maybe do some credit card fraud. I have seen computers with no passwords. Just move the mouse and they're in. Very dangerous. And these were customer facing computers. So the employee sits close to where customers might walk in and out. They can walk by, move the mouse, see the computer's unlocked, and then do what they got to do. I've seen no two-factor authentication on emails. or weak emails. I've seen client data being sent via free email accounts. So, employee at XYZ Corp decides, I'm not going to use the XYZ Corp email. I'm going to use my Gmail account and send information that way for whatever reason. Maybe they forgot. I've seen this. They forgot their password, so they just used their own email account. I've seen that. Very dangerous stuff. So, that's part of your written information security plan. You cannot use your personal email at work whatsoever. I've seen just about everything. Again, the printers with the default passwords, the routers with default passwords. I've seen networks exposed to the internet, the entire world. So you go to the business's IP address, and there's a login for their router. So at the time, the password was not that hard to guess. If you took a few guesses at it, you might have gotten it. And then you've got access to the entire network of the business. Oh, I see something in the chat here. Let me see what we got here. Another great session. Oh, I'm not done yet, Roseanne. So there's a lot that needs to get addressed. No backups. Businesses with no backups. These are all the things that fall under any compliance rules. So again, Connecticut, Colorado, California, New York. I'm forgetting 2 other states. There's at least 1 or 2 other states that have very strict data protection laws in place. And so even if your business doesn't fall under FTC or the OCR or whatever other compliance programs are out there, you have to adhere to your state's compliance laws. If you accept credit cards, you have to adhere to PCI DSS, at least to some degree, depending on how you accept those credit cards. So you have some compliance laws, but even before that, you have a responsibility to your clients, and not doing your best to protect their information you're doing a disservice to those clients. So setting up strong passwords, not reusing passwords, adding multi-factor authentication to everything. And I'll get to that another day, but even I tell people all the time, if you don't have it on things like, let's just say Facebook account. Well, you might think, all right, who cares? It's not my business. It has nothing to do with my business. But that's not true, because if anybody knows what you do for your business and then they compromise your Facebook account, they can now use that to target your audience, whoever that might be. If you do have, by any chance, clients on your list of friends, then you're now exposing those clients, because you might start sending them messages even though it's not you, or you might, there's a million different ways that attackers can use any little thing they can find about you against you. And so the key is to do everything you can to protect that. Don't reuse the passwords. You turn on multi-factor authentication. Encrypt everything. So if you have Windows 10 or 11 Pro, you can encrypt your computer for free. And it's called BitLocker. It's really easy to turn on. All you have to do is make sure you store the encryption key somewhere where you won't lose it. Then if anybody ever steals that device, they cannot steal the data off of that device. And that goes, I have a million little flash drives in my office, USB drives, and those are primarily for fix and repair stuff. But if you keep data on those flash drives and encrypt them, same way, you can use BitLocker. If you have an Apple computer, it has encryption built in called Firewall. I think it's called Firewall, and that will encrypt your hard drive. I think it's on by default. Your smartphones, most of them are encrypted, but 5-10 years ago, nobody thought about encrypting their smartphones, and you had to turn it on in order to be encrypted. There's a million other things you can do to help protect your client data. Making sure your office is secure, making sure that your computers are locked. There's another one. People leave their computers unlocked. They leave for the day, leave it unlocked. It doesn't have a screensaver that locks the computer, doesn't time out. And so now the computer's left unlocked. And I've actually seen this too, where the computer, because it's left unlocked, somebody was able to remote into the computer and do whatever they wanted because they didn't need the password. So they were actually posting, doesn't sound too bad, but it was bad. They were posting on the person's Facebook account because they left the computer unlocked. They left Facebook logged in, so they would go and post stuff on their Facebook account. And then the person would go back the next day and go, I didn't post these things. Where are they coming from? So all of these things can happen if we're not taking the necessary precautions. Do we have any questions? Oh, the trauma. I know a good mental health specialist, Tamar, if you're interested. There's a joke. She's not laughing. Before we move on, Roseanne, I know I sent you a list of the topics. So October is going to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so we're going to do a lot around that. I don't remember what next week's is, though. I'll have to look it up. But any questions? No questions. I would say that if you go into a business, and a lot of us, I know for a fact that we use local businesses, which is great. I love that. Just make sure, like I said, the commercial property renter agency was asking for Social Security number, EIN number, and some other information. I don't remember what it was now. And it was a Word document, and they wanted it filled in and sent back via email. And I was like, no. I don't know who's going to see it. I don't know who has access to your email. I don't know if your email is compromised. I don't know any of this. And so from a customer perspective, that's how everybody should be looking at it. But it also violates the FTC Safeguard Rules because it is a financial firm under their definition. And so they should be a little more cautious. They should have some kind of portal where they can upload the information. I know one of my clients is a tax preparer, and all his information gets uploaded. When he sends it, when you ask the clients for the different documents, it gets uploaded into a portal, and it's encrypted in transit. So he's not having them send it to him in an email. It's all going through this portal. And there's, a million different portals out there. So if you're in any of those industries, healthcare, financial, law, legal, any of them where information can be sensitive, you should have some way where they can send you the information encrypted. If you have Microsoft or Google email, professional emails, then you do have the ability to send encrypted emails. The problem is the person on the other end may not either know how or don't have the ability.
So I do have one question for you. You had given in the beginning an example of a new or current ongoing email scam, Microsoft with the two-factor authentication.
Yes.
Did you say that you have an example of that on your YouTube?
I do.
And can I link from that from your website?
Yeah, I have to check to see if it updated, but I'll put the link in the chat too.
Okay. I mean, that again, these are just, I think, important things to share with our members and certainly colleagues, even family and friends, to show them how real these things look.
Yeah, I agree. And so the whole reason they use the QR code is because you can't see the link in a QR code. You have to actually scan it in order for you to, and then the chances of you looking at the actual link on your phone is less likely than if you're on the computer.
Wow, look at this. Yeah.
Yeah. I did start a new Facebook group too called Scam Likely. You probably saw me promote it a few times But we're sharing a bunch of stuff in there. So it's me and a couple of other IT professionals.
Oh, okay.
And I do have a neighbor who wanted to help admin. She's not in IT, but she's she wanted to help admin, so I added her too.
Great.
I just made a Facebook finally after the trauma. So
Yeah, I didn't want to bring that up, Tamar, because I know I didn't want you to think I was talking about you, but I wasn't.
It's okay. I'm better now. I'm a better person now for that.
And Roseanne, it is on the homepage too, on the website.
On your website. Awesome. So, okay, cool. We can look right from there.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom, it's the last video I uploaded.
Awesome. I saw your recordings out there too of the other ones, other sessions you had, so.
Yeah, the second one I screwed up, so I had to fix it a little bit. I was recording you guys instead of the presentation.
Well, it's always wonderful, valuable information, Scott. So thank you for this.
You're welcome. I'm going to end the recording here.